Hello, hello.
Good morning. Here we are on a live stream. Um, we are releasing 2.0. Well, actually, not releasing it, presenting it today. Showing all the new good stuff with me and my co-founder, Nick Landers. For intros, I am Will Pearce, CEO, and other co-founder of Dreadnode. We are an offensive machine learning company. That's always been kind of our big calling in terms of, both our backgrounds, obviously, where we were both network operators. Nick was a malware dev, and he's probably one of the best operators you can find. And we are ready to show off the new stuff. So in 1.0, if you're familiar, as we've been working through, well, AI is just crazy at the moment. So if you work in AI, I don't think you're getting a lot of sleep.
I haven't been.
In the token slot machine that is coding agents, and it is super fun. You could just sort of build whatever you want, like kind of whenever you want. At any given time, I have like 6 or 7 terminals that I'm managing next to whatever automatic loop of the day that's going on. There are some cool ones. But yeah, I think just for intros, so we set up 1.0, rigging observability was a big deal. Coding agents, were maybe not, it was maybe always possible to code. It was not always possible to control them. So I think over Christmas, a lot of people realized the interface has gotten really good. So, the models are always going to be good. They'll always increase in capability, but, the models or the interfaces are kind of where the rubber hits the road, which is super fun, especially when you get to control it, like with we have our own agent library, which is an absolute kind of pain to upkeep, but it is super fun having your own agent library that you get to do whatever you want with. So yeah, here, if you're, well, our first version was very observability focused, what's going on all the time with these agents. And then this 2.0 is sort of that whole stack where I think more recently what we've been doing is giving our CLI to Dreadnode, our agent. We had a hard time naming it. We were thinking like Kraken or the Dreadnode agent, or what was the
Dread
other
mode.
one?
Dread
Dread
is a good
mode.
prefix to most things. We like to use that.
Yeah, Dread mode. That's a mode that we get into and have never left, I think, so far. And what else did we come up with? Justin was one. Wasn't a very
Did
serious
we?
one.
I would not have approved that.
No.
I guess they usually all have cute names.
Yeah. Yeah, we should do that. We should have put a cute thing like Anthropic did yesterday with their pets. But ours should be like pirate themed, animal pirate themed.
Um,
Anyway,
yeah, I guess I'm kind of curious. I don't know, not that this is necessarily an interview, but um, the last 3 months for me have obviously the models continue to get extremely capable. We've known they've been capable of these tasks for a long time. I think what's starting to get very prevalent is like the meta capability that they have to like drive and orchestrate a process. And I think we're just really excited to get out of the way of these processes, like providing resources to uh, a flow and just being able to describe a capability that you want and domain knowledge that you want and see it kind of materialize in front of your eyes. I've been thinking a lot about, I don't know, what the future of even documentation feels like, having to like learn a product as opposed to just opening it up and having it like make magic for you. Um, I think a lot of us have played with like CLI tools and async agent interfaces, and we just kind of, it's like you never went and read the docs for how to do like Codex or Claude Code. You just opened it up and started doing the thing that you were used to doing. And I think the dev space has really shown that that is like I mean, incredibly transformative. It's actually really intuitive for people. I've had like I think amongst many devs like a crazy shift over the last 3 months where I just have reframed like where my value comes from being somebody who used to value the work that I put into the outcome, and now into, I don't know, like monitoring or facilitating a process and just like checking results. I just kind of maybe want to get your thoughts, Will, on, and we obviously work a lot on like the tech, but I don't know. Does the last 3 months like did you always know you were going to arrive at the place where your value as a security expert would get like so abstracted that you literally just needed to describe what you wanted to see?
Uh, yeah, I just maybe didn't think it was going to happen so quickly. I mean, not that it's happened so quickly, but I think when you like at a, kind of prior to this, I was at NVIDIA, and they're just like use as much compute as possible. And you're like, okay, what does that mean? They're like, here's a supercomputer. You're like, all right. So when they tell you to go solve the hardest problems you can think of, and I'm like, all right, well, I want to go solve security. And so then you start thinking about like, I have a supercomputer, have as much compute as you can shake several sticks at. And the first problem you run into is like you just don't have enough data, and then you don't have enough like process. So it's not that something's unsolvable or uncomputable. It's that you just don't have the right information to give it the compute. And I think through like, I don't know, if you just maybe believe the labs, I think people would be and just sort of put blinders on, which is a terrible thing to say, but maybe put blinders on, and just sort of believed, what they're saying, because the models have just increasing capability since they started like with GPT-1. And so, but every new release, like people are like, oh, it can do this now, but it can't do that other thing. Like, okay, well, 6 months ago, it couldn't do the thing that it can do now. So, like, where's the line?
Yeah.
I think people have realized, like, especially with vulnerability research, people have realized, these models are extremely good, but now they're like peers to you. So, where do you go from there? So for us, I think, giving an agent a whole platform to work with, is probably where, the space, well, that's where we're going. So, you give it all the tools and all the resources, and you get to share a space, with this really powerful model, where you're trying to get out of the way of it and not be the arbiter of like where it goes and what it does, and I guess in a security sense, but also providing guardrails to it, so you get that oversight. But yeah, it's a great space right now. And then I think there are things that like fall first. So wherever there's like the most representative data, like GitHub or web apps, like those are obviously they've gone first. And then harder stuff like networks, places with slightly more risk will go last just because they're just slightly more risky. But like with the right guardrails, it hasn't been that difficult to get an agent to like do network ops. And then the rest is just like scaling, which is its own challenge, because just like weird stuff breaks at scale. I've been in the space, but what about you? Like, you're CTO of an offensive AI company. Actually, I can remember where you're like, we were doing that stuff, and you're like, all right, well, hey, good luck. And then we disappeared. Maybe it will, maybe it won't. Yeah, I'd ask the same question of you. Like, I was always like AI pill. Yeah, I was just so done writing reports that I was gonna do anything else.
Yeah. Yeah. That's a really fair point. Yeah, I suppose maybe it's like a good time I can kind of crack open some of the tech and talk about. I'll frame my response in the magic that I start to see occurring in this space. When we worked on first iterations of our platform, a lot of what we spent time doing was driving like the back half process of, I don't know, describing a working really hard to like put a capability conceptually into code or a harness, and then trying to like build the flywheel around it. And that first bit always felt like really hard, like especially when we first started. I mean, the tools we built were really capable, but it took a lot of like very detailed finicking to like get everything working properly. And I think that was like somewhat satisfying. Like I don't think the truth of the capacity to, I don't know, make magic happen with those models had like hit me then. I still saw them as like tools as opposed to things that orchestrate. Um, so yeah, I suppose the first bit of tech that's worth kind of introducing that for us is like the landing ground for security ops that we see in the future. Everyone loves the coding sort of TUI interface right now. I think there's still a really strong place for web components and UIs, but at the end of the day, I grew up building terminal-based hacking tools, and so it's actually really neat to see that sort of stuff represented. Um, so a big net new component of V2 is there is effectively a whole CLI and TUI stack that sit richly on top of our SDK. It'll feel extremely comfortable to anyone who's used things like Cloud Code or Codex before. We're not wrapping an underlying framework, so we get a lot of really nice control on that. And then we have taken what used to be a really disparate concept of thinking about these tool sets written in Python or these agents, which were like little instantiations of classes, and just pack them up into a box that we call capabilities. These capabilities exist in a hub. They work like any other sharing mech you'd expect, and they can capture agent skills, MCP configurations, tools, and the agent definitions themselves. So they're effectively a really nice transition for capturing domain knowledge that for us has been spread across like an insane number of GitHub repos, internal GitHub repos. It's kind of crazy. We
Actually, what's even crazier is it was like no, yeah, Christmas. We went home. We had like 212 repos or something,
mhm.
and over the last, it was like got to March and we had 300 plus, just because of there was. I mean, I'd like to see some stats out of GitHub to see like how many more repos they
Yeah,
had. But so okay, so this is our in the back here is our framework. So we have a default agent. Is that right?
yeah. We have a default agent. It's what you'd expect. There's like a set of kind of stock tools, a really standard core tooling layer, and then um, there is an agent selector, and it effectively is pulling in all of the agents from all the capabilities that you have installed. This is like your main driver agent. So oftentimes you can just sit in the default agent. It's aware of how to use our whole platform, and in addition to like the CLI and everything like that. And supplemental agents like our AI red teaming agent, for example, is built by Raja, and it's like solely focused on automating a whole AI red teaming attack pipeline. So you can legitimately come in and describe the types of attacks you want to run, and the agent knows how to construct the pipelines in code, execute them, and then like flow data through. And these things are really easy to grab off the shelf. They have all the standard flows you would expect from this. So there's effectively versioning on the back end. I'll actually switch over and maybe show a little bit of the hub, which is where you can kind of visualize some of these capabilities. So every user has an organization, and we've opened up the concept of teams and centralized billing to everyone. So it's
Wait, so
really
your
come.
I don't think your screen has changed.
Oh, I do desktop here.
But yeah, hub was a big deal. I think what we find when we work with teams is like people have capabilities, they're just strewn about across the place. So like people will have capabilities in GitHub, they'll have them locally, they'll have them in Docker, they'll have them or Docker Hub. And in fact, we had the same thing. And so, having a hub is I guess it's not an uncommon thing to have, but just a place to store and version and hash and share
Yeah.
capabilities. Yeah.
I think it's a big one too. I think there's also a big element for me of obviously in an ideal world, there's a really nice place a lot of these coding tools are going where they imagine like everything's on GitHub and everything's like a repo and there's this big like shared pool of everyone sharing capabilities. The reality is when you get into a domain space and you're a team who has this deployed on-prem and you want to keep all this stuff private, or you're somebody who has grabbed an organization and you want to keep things like capabilities or your evaluation environments private to you or share them publicly, you can do that. So for us, it was really important to take all of the niceties of sort of packaging up models and data sets and security tasks and capabilities and bring them into a space where it's familiar, you can version them, you can publish them, you can upload them, but also you get a lot of control over the data and the capability itself. Um, so the kind of the four main, obviously I started with capabilities, but the four main uh, objects that the platform sort of surfaces for you are capabilities that capture just that. They're like the actual domain expertise stored and packed up. Security tasks, we have an insane amount of environments. These are like your term bench tasks. These are private evals and public evals. And literally every, you know, CTF challenge or real world environment or go to Active Directory network or benchmark that would be relevant to evaluating performance. We have a bunch of these pre-built and uploaded, and you can design your own really easily. They'll follow like a very similar format. And in fact, it's also really easy for you to just ask the agent to create these components for you. So you can describe the capability you want and also describe the tasks that you want to see. And it can write, solutioning mechs for you and set up the environments, the services that get mounted and the validation. You can look over it as a person. And if it looks okay, you hit go and this whole thing feeds into a larger pipeline. So
Yeah. We tend to do a lot of evals. And even that, I mean, not just capabilities, but evals are, I think, they're pretty boring and oftentimes they're not say boring, but they are like good baselines for things. And you might have your own, your own environments that you want to eval in, but no one really like tracks them or versions them, let alone tracks and versions them against an agent.
mhm.
So what you end up with is like, okay, you've evaled the model, but you don't actually know which agent version it was evaled against, and then you don't know, which model version it was, because they exist in two separate places. So like bring them together um, was actually kind of nice. Yeah, and then just environments. It could be like a production environment. It could be like a C2 deployment as an environment. Um, but the idea really was like the AI space has a lot of benchmarks, but the security space has relatively fewer. And people, what I love about the AI space is they're very like happy about sharing. Like a lot of them came from academia,
Mhm.
and so they're all about collaboration. Security people are relatively less about collaboration, and they have like secret sauce they want to protect.
Yeah.
Um,
Can you help me think of a capability? What's a capability I could ask to build right now?
uh, my go-to is usually like baking cookies, but
You want to do something more fun, like security focused?
yeah, let's like scan the internet for AI
Yeah,
services, maybe.
yeah, I'm trying to. Yeah, yeah, that's a good one.
Let's go poke at open clawbot or
Oh,
whatever.
yeah, yeah, that's good.
It's a good good punching good punching bag. Or Jupiter. Jupiter's always a fun target. Yeah, tracking them. And then the other two are what? Data sets. So you want to keep a data set of vulnerabilities. You want to keep create a training data set for something. The other one's models. Not everyone's into training models. There is a subset of people that are like, I, I'm only interested in fine tuning my own model, not um, using frontier models. And
Mhm.
to be fair, there are spaces where models are better than frontier models in certain situations, but write model, write task. We have like a model repository there. They're all, yeah, versioned. It was actually pretty interesting using OCI for data sets versus like get LFS, which is nice, but get LFS is a pain. I don't
Yeah.
know how they did that without coding agents, to be honest. I don't think I'd have the energy for it.
Yeah. So you can talk a little bit about what's going on in the background. Obviously, this is a familiar flow. We could see tool calls flowing. We've opted for like a very tight approach to tool calls in the visualization. You could obviously toggle it if you want, but I find that oftentimes I'm trying to keep track of a high level process. So when we're operating with agents, I mainly just want to see like what the key actions are. It's sort of loaded up a meta process. It has the CLI capacity to initialize the capability. So it's called an AI info recon. It has all the documentation necessary to know how to like write skills and agents. It will interview you if it thinks that the particular capability you're using might vary in your intent. So maybe you're doing more of a shiny rock thing, and it wants to know what exact things you're looking for. It might come and surface that to you. But it's effectively capable of building out the capability and then validating it and publishing it into the repo. And then the back half of this is the evaluations half, where once you have a capability published, you ultimately want to like start, mirroring it to um,
Tasks, evaluations.
tasks. Yeah, and start getting like scoring information back. So taking a particular capability that up until that point has just kind of been like vibe written and actually like benchmarking it against a set of tasks. So capabilities start to represent like a really clean unit of working with evaluation data. Like before, it was you had to kind of write this code up for evaluations, and you'd have to think a lot about like the interior scoring mechs. And I think the benchmarking solutions for like terminal coding agents has just presented a really nice pattern there. The tasks that we write for our security evals follow that same consistent pattern. You can deploy any amount of infrastructure, and all of this stuff gets executed up inside of sandboxes. And the scoring mechanism is just a simple validator if you want it to be. Obviously, our SDK has a bunch of rich scoring and metrics and hooks underneath if you want to. But I think for a lot of teams, they just want a really quick sort of gut check on the maturity of a particular capability.
I do love our hook system.
Yeah, that
There's
was
a couple of things that I like bang on about at work, and one of them is Ray, but the other one is like our hook system. So a lot of frameworks, that they're like shell out hooks, um, but then ours is very like interior focused. So for cyber especially, like having a lot of interior control over the agent loop is like kind of everything you want.
yeah,
You're not always looking to use every tool under the sun, but you are looking to like have a supreme amount of control over like how and what and when.
yeah,
So it's definitely like not doesn't seem to be like the popular pattern, but it is, I think, more useful for security workflows.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. I'll talk about a few other things here. A big part of this for us as well was not making your box be the place for compute. So the sandbox right now, or the TUI you can see is actually like connected up to the platform, but it's running in like local mode. That effectively means that all the agent interactions occurring on my box. We'll see if runtime booting is happy for me in dev. But runtimes are effectively our abstraction for your remote compute. So you can request that the platform boot up infrastructure like sandboxes for you. You can start these runtimes. You can connect the TUI into those runtimes and actually get a full refresh and start operating inside of the runtime itself. And at that point, you're in a fully isolated environment, and these sandboxes have whole lifecycle systems to them. And when we run our evaluations or some of the cool stuff Will's going to talk about with like worlds, all of that stuff happens in that compute. So you kind of have the option as a user to decide where exactly you want to execute. So you can see I connected, and now I'm connected to a remote runtime, and I can ask the agent. Just get a little familiar. Oh, right. And there's a secret system now. So when you boot these runtimes, you can manage secrets that get injected into the runtime. So if you have your own BYOK for models, and normally you would just have those configurations on your box, you can bring them up into the platform, and then those will get injected into the runtimes themselves. In this case, I actually have an easier mode, which is we have Dreadnode provided models. So we have a proxy that's connected to our credit system. We bill effectively at inference cost. So whatever you pay for inference, you can just pay it through us to get the convenience of not having to configure all of your keys. I'm not interested in taking your extra money for like proxying tokens and shipping them around for you. But that's a really nice option for just making the whole like model config stack work a little easier. And bugs in demo, but yeah, I think hopefully that covers like the runtime stack a little bit. How the sandboxes work. There's some pages in the platform for visualizing these sandboxes. Um, and I'm not sure what org context I'm in, but I think I'm probably ready to throw it over to you for a little bit, Will, if you want to talk about some of the higher order stuff like optimization, worlds, training.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to let this capability dev process sit in the background, and we'll see at the end if something fun comes out.
Yeah, having your own agent framework is fun. Also, sandboxes are fun. I don't know if like there's just like infinite compute up there, so I think there's just a lot of really outside of the whole like models are good. You know, there's like a whole AI stack that's been built that is you know uh, represents like scale, and so like being able to put like a mythic server on like in a tiny little sandbox and then do 1,000 of them, is really interesting. Um, next to all kinds of stuff.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I'm very excited to get to it. I think there's a lot of, we did this experiment with worlds and synthetic environments. Obviously had a lot of interest in it, and putting it into a pipeline has its own like interesting nuances where obviously it's an extremely like automated system, and in an ideal world that data purely gets turned into like trajectories for training. But there's something really cool almost about like taking a step back and just purely having an agent be able to pick up a set of tools, and all of the calls that it's making into that environment or with those tools is completely synthetic. So you can probably get to it when you get to it, but I'd be interested to hear maybe your thoughts on what Worlds represents, why it was built. We obviously teased it. I think it was released or mentioned a month or so ago.
Oh yeah.
We've been working
Oh
hard to
yeah.
build the platform.
Yeah. Worlds. Like synthetic data is hard. Well, training is just hard. So like you need like kind of a lot of data, relatively speaking, and like standing up infrastructure is really hard for people like me because I'm not. I don't like Terraform is really frustrating. Um, and it's like you kind of when you get into a network, like you don't know. It's like it might be a new network, but like before you get there, there's a path, right? And it's like we know what all the tools are. We have our like standard operating procedures. Like we know when you type a command in, like you pretty much know the one of three things you're going to get back. And so yeah, we just kind of synthesize the whole thing. And it's relatively I don't know. It's actually kind of boring once you have it. Just because you're like, oh, this is just the commands that I would run anyway. And you're like, yeah, that's all it is.
At the risk of like asking for too basic of a description, like obviously when I hear like synthetic data generation or synthetic environments, I think like a few different ideas come to mind. I'm curious if you can like break down at least at a high level, like how kind of Worlds conceptualizes that thing. Is it like, I'm asking the question almost like an interview, but like, is it a model in the background? Is it like a harness? Like what is the underlying system that like drives it, like makes the magic kind of happen?
But it starts with like a manifest. So I'm currently just asking our agent to create us a manifest. And then we have like samplers that'll go through the environment and just be like this command, that command, all the way to some end goal. So you set some arbitrary goal, like go get this account, or go grab domain admin or something. And then the samplers, whether they're an agent or like, I don't know, a random sampler, just if this then that kind of a thing. Go get it, or go create, or go run those commands. And then, Max has worked really hard to get all of the commands and the tools to, be accurate in terms of like the responses you would get. So
Right.
then at
There's
the end,
like a tooling layer that sits on front that effectively like say I'm modeling like an Active Directory environment. When I run like a net exec command or a WMI command, there's like a layer of interpretation, right? Like those commands are interacting with like a protocol rules system underneath, but their particular output is going to depend on what tool call it is, right? And like the args and stuff. And I would
yeah,
assume it's like a big part of Worlds is just like building those compat layers so you can synthesize all the different, not only the environment, but like you have to synthesize the interface by which you access that environment.
yeah, yeah, exactly. It's really painful to like build at first, because if your rules engine is wrong, then all your training data is going to be wrong, and so you're going to teach the model bad things to do in the network versus, the right action to take. So let's see. That's just generating. All right. Okay. While that generates, yeah. So we have this like lab space, and that basically represents lab type things. So evaluations we've covered, optimization. Um, you know, Optimization covers like two spaces, like training and like prompt optimization. So here we just have like a web capability that ads did. And I just wanted to run it against some of our tasks where it's just going to iterate on the prompt, next to some output. And you get like some charts in terms of like your Pareto frontier, or whatever, but just metrics about how the model is performing and improving. Next to some like artifacts you get, and you can kind of see like the live process. So it's very long instructions. Basically your system prompt followed by, some iteration on that system prompt, and then it'll go run the same process and be like, better or worse, hotter, colder. And if it's like hotter, it'll keep the change. If it's colder, it'll throw it away and try again.
I think I like this too when you think about, I don't know, there's like a mentality shift I've gone through where it's like I used to look at dashboards like this and I would feel like all of this data was like there for me to interpret. And I think we live in this really great world now where you can think about like building interfaces for like self optimizing processes, right? Like if an agent is orchestrating the optimization process, the interpretation of this data is much more powerful if we think about like an agent or a higher order process consuming it. And you kind of just get this magical dashboard where you see like amazing stuff going on and things happening, kind of like evals
Yeah.
as well. And
All right.
if like the information is available, then line goes up.
My agent's asking me entirely too many questions.
Yeah.
Let's see. What did we cover? Training. Trainings. Some people want to train, some people don't. That's why it's called the lab. Basically, we have Tinker, if you think thinking machines in the back. For training, at some point here soon, we'll have modal and then eventually our own infrastructure. It's pretty painful to run machine learning infrastructure, but not impossible. But then Tinker is really nice because they like have abstracted the whole GPU management piece for an API, and they do like LoRa's. It's really fast to train. But then, once you get a sort of a trajectory and a capability, we'll take that like system prompt that you've just optimized, and then we'll go take that data set that you generated out of worlds or wherever. And then we'll go from there, or then you'll get like a model. So let's see if this is coming up.
Where do you where do you sit these days on? I don't know. The open source models. Maybe more specifically, our intuition has been that smaller task specific models are a really good path for teams to like drive faster adoption at lower cost. And I feel like Worlds even makes that like more accessible because a big part of that cost was environment stand up, right? Like it was heavy just to be able to make the environments and run them for long enough to get enough data. So I may be curious with your like, I don't know, crystal ball a little bit, your like Willism. Like, do you think model training will be a more common part of security teams like future paths, or maybe even less common because the core models that they run on top of are just getting so good that you start to focus all your energy purely on like harness orchestration? Like, what domain specific knowledge are you giving it in the moment with a skill, or what tooling interfaces are you giving it? And ultimately, you expect that to maybe outpace training. Just curious to get your take.
Um, yeah, I think for most folks, like using frontier models is fine. Like they're amazing at what they do. I don't think there's really, it's like right model for the right task. But I think at a certain scale, like um, token economics, like it starts to get expensive. Um, to just to run like you want to do a whole network or a whole web app or a whole, or you might have that like across customers, um, and where like labs can sort of subsidize that cost, like not everybody can. um,
And what do you? I think a big change for us was, I mean, we're huge fans of thinking machines. Tinker is an amazing API in terms of abstracting away like a lot of the heavy training processes. I feel like even just tools like that, where people are doing kind of the path we're walking to, where it's like you provide the infrastructure to make what used to feel like a really hard process just magically easy. Like, do you think that that's a big shift that also drives like training being a more like adoptable flow of not having to like mess with nuances of, I don't know, model configs and training
yeah,
params?
it's like it's like you used to write we used to write slingshot, or used to teach like dark side ops or whatever.
Mhm.
And it's maybe the difference between using Cobalt Strike and like using your own custom C2, where if you use like Cobalt Strike, um, it's going to be acceptable, but for if you actually want to like get into the details, um, and sort of understand the
Yeah, the nuances of it.
underlying, yeah, like because I don't know we ever got caught with like custom C2s, so it's like a lot of work, and it's maybe seemingly like pointless to a lot of folks, but I think like when you get to those like higher levels, it's actually maybe kind of a requirement
Yeah,
in some
yeah.
sense.
This actually leads me down an interesting. I'll maybe I'll give my thoughts, and then I maybe want to like see if you have um, a response to it. So I guess for background for everyone, Will and I were network operators for a long time. We actually met when I was teaching a training course at Black Hat. I used to teach malware development, and I used to write malware toolkits. And I would get asked a lot. especially in the early days, like why you would write your own tools over just using like the popular ones. Like for people in the space, like Metasploit or whatnot, that was like the thing to go to. Like everybody used Metasploit for hacking. Maybe you used Cobalt Strike if you were like a red teamer, but bespoke like end-to-end C2 tooling or command and control tooling where you were like building payloads and stagers and modules just like was not a thing. People didn't do that. And over time the adoption grew wildly. I think from like the 4 years that I was teaching those courses, 4 or 5 years, it went from like nobody had was doing any tool development every time I taught a course to most of the people in the courses being people who had tried or attempted or were actively developing their tools. And I'm kind of thoughtful of the analogy that we're currently in today, where there's like these really common harnesses, like the harnesses to use, the skills to use, like Claude or Codex. And there's kind of an underlying current of tools like Pi or Open Code. And I just wonder what the future will hold in terms of people feeling like their harness and all the modifications and everything that goes into it starts to become like their special sauce. And how like today, if you were to say, well, you should write your own like agent harness, people say, well, yeah, but Cloud Code is so good, which is the exact response I used to get for Cobalt Strike. Into maybe like a year from now, that's extremely common. And people have these platforms where they have like very nuanced, personalized versions of their harnesses and their skills and everything that kind of goes into their workflows, and it being custom and bespoke and specialized to them is like commonplace. Like that's the expectation. It was a long you know sort of a rant, but
Yeah, sandboxes. I don't know. Workers are hard. All right, here we go. I was trying to show like latest, but
nice. Hey
um,
man, we're troubleshooting live. This is how it goes.
yeah, AI moves fast. Um, all right, so basically, you generate a network of some number of hosts, big, small. You generate identities, very bloodhound-like, um,
This
and
comes from
then
the manifest, right? So the manifest describes
yeah,
like the structure, and then when you generate, you get to like choose how big it is, or does a manifest define that?
yeah, you get to choose how large the network is that you
Okay.
want, and then kind of how many edges you want, and um, the commands, the tooling that you want as well. So you can kind of go through, but then you basically get inside of this synthetic network, you get like a command catalog, and this is what gets handed to the sampling piece or the agent. And so these are sort of all the tools that are available within the environment.
Oh, cool.
Um,
I would say you think I'd know because I'm CTO, but product moves really fast.
yeah, it's yeah, it's hard to keep up with even each other.
Yeah,
Um,
seriously. I mean, I feel like I could pull up parts of the tool where you're like, oh, that's cool. I didn't know we had that.
yeah, and so
Cool.
these
So
are
this is like your tooling layer of this is all the different ways you can kind of touch the environment, but it's through the lens of each specific tool and all of their interfaces.
yeah, yeah, exactly. And then it just comes up in a sandbox, and so that sandbox will like stay up until you. All right, so now the sandbox is up. Generate some trajectories, and trajectories are just like, I mean, they're just like chat logs functionally. But you're just going to go through and just sample all of the paths. So you're going to go like query the net. It's like 20 questions for a network, which is basically network ops. Are you admin? Yes.
I don't think I
Are
don't think
you
red teamers would
admin?
like to admit that, but I do agree with you.
Yeah, I think you get to that point where you're like, I'm just asking Google, and this Google just happens to be a network.
Yeah, yeah. And there's like a sampler mech, right? Of like you get to choose the way like depending on the types of trajectories, effectively because you have a graph, you can technically sample a few different ways across that, correct?
Yeah, yeah. And some are better than others. Like, you know, even though you know all the paths, like for training, you don't want it to be like perfect. Um, like you need some noise in your training set. Otherwise, the model won't be able to sort of operate in a generalized way. It won't be able to operate in multiple networks, just a few.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see. Yeah, so generating trajectories. And it, like I said, is a little boring, but it's literally just all the commands. So, we're going to run the agent's running an nmap command against some host. And, these are all the ports that are open. And so as it's going through, this network, right, it's just running these commands, and you're getting responses back like,
Like it was real.
like it was real. Yeah. And
So
which is
cool.
kind of the point. But it's like, and once you see it, it's just like, yeah, these are just commands, but then it's synthetic, and you can generate, thousands of these.
Man, I mean, call me nostalgic a little bit, but
Yeah.
back when we first started, so there's when Will and I first started looking at like the security AI intersection, and by say us, I mean Will, because he was for some reason way back then motivated to try to figure out how to use GANs and stuff to operate on oplog data. But we used to capture all of these op logs, and they looked just like this. They were the raw text logs from like a terminal based stage 2 implant. So you'd get like thousands of lines of just like raw command output pairs, and it represented like our whole op, like literally a week of work, completely compromising a network, all conceptualized through like a single text log. And it's so incredible that we've come around to like being able to synthesize that accurately and properly, and you arrive at what is essentially that op log, and it's describing like a path through an environment. And from any other perspective, that's all you need to like understand how to actually do the task, because as an operator, that's all we got. Like all we
Yeah,
were ever looking at was op logs. It's really cool.
it is pretty neat. I was just tired of writing reports, is really it. It's like the whole thing,
You and I
which
both, for sure.
now now people can just generate them. Um, and then these trajectories, they can be enriched. And so if you have like a sub process, like trying to generate one with like 100 steps, I guess 23 steps. This is what I was trying to show the local host, because I like my UI better.
Yeah, I hear you.
Currently.
It'll be done by the end of the day, I'm sure.
Yeah. Anyway, when you get to, so all these trajectories, so I don't know, generated a gajillion of them, and you're like, I think I'm ready to do some training. All of these get stored as data sets. So, as a world trajectory. And so now this goes straight into like a training process, where, let's see. There's that whole conversation of like describing something as I did something when you actually had a model do something.
Yeah, exactly. Well, it's like how
Yeah.
all my comments on GitHub are actually written by agents now, and they sound all friendly and they're very nice. And then I go back and read them, or I'll get comments from other people in our team, and it's like, oh, that was nice of you. I know Claude wrote that, but I feel you in it.
Yeah. So having our agent kind of train a model at the moment. So we're just going to go see if we can take this trajectory and go train a model. Raja was uploading 5 terabytes of data.
Yeah.
It's crazy. Anyway, so I have training jobs. These ones are actually in localhost, but basically, generate a bunch of trajectories, throw it into an SFT process. We use Tinker. If you haven't played with Tinker, it's so nice. And the way they do pricing too is like tokens in, tokens out, which is pretty awesome. It's just a different way. I haven't seen pricing done like that for training. So it's very interesting. And you get all your loss curves, and then at some point you get, your checkpoints will get stored, put into models. Let's see, we haven't even got to AI red teaming. We
I
put
was
our
gonna
whole
say,
AI red teaming framework
if
in
you want to let me
here.
switch over, I can tab through some of this stuff. And or actually, if you want to go to dev, I don't know if you Raja has some
Oh yeah,
stuff in there.
yeah. So like there's a lot of AI red teaming frameworks out there, and it's kind of like whenever counterfeit, for example, like all the algorithms are open source. Security people aren't writing their own algorithms, and so we always tend to take things off the shelf. In the AI red teaming space, where like Pirate gets wrapped or Grok gets wrapped, or something. I guess we could have wrapped it. But we didn't. So yeah, and we like Tap, Tree of Attacks, or Goat, something like that, or Crescendo, for example. And these are like iterative, based attacks where it's actually kind of like JEPA. Actually, Roger was telling me the other day he was like using our optimization framework to get red team
I
models.
don't get me
It's just like
started.
okay,
They're the same thing. Like the AI red teaming optimization algorithms are functionally indistinguishable from prompt optimization algorithms.
yeah. Anyway,
Um,
and so yeah, so we just have a red teaming framework in here. You can just sort of go through assessments. Um, it's wood, and then we have sort of the compliance coverage here if you're into those, where the Google Safe, the NIST, RMF, MITRE Atlas,
I love that
like
framing. If you're into it, I don't know that anybody necessarily opts to be into it, but
yeah, some people need it, some people don't. I feel like compliance, well, for compliance, it's really nice. And then we have traces for all the attacks, so you can kind of like go through and just see all of the traces for all of the attacks, like all the refinement steps, if you want to. And what these, not that everyone's going to go through all of them, but what this functionally becomes is like safety training data. So if you are someone like doing evals for the labs, or they have a want to generate a lot of data for post training, post safety training, things like that, just being able to run a lot of different attacks, um, against the thing with, I don't know, we have a ton of transforms. So this one's obviously been transformed to like base 64 or some base transform. So going back and forth there is awesome.
I think
You know,
a really cool part of this framework too, and actually like Raja, like one of the key vertical stacks and a rule that he kind of followed was the AI red teaming framework that sits underneath is extremely capable. We have an insane number of scores and transforms, co-located. But at the end of the day, the way Raja interacts with this tool is talking to an agent, and effectively, he talks to his AI red teaming agent and says, "I want to test this model with these attacks in this data set," and all of that process happens automatically. And the AI red teaming effectively just appears in a dashboard, and he didn't have to go and like touch code. He didn't have to like deal with config files. There's resources and assets produced, but it's like, I think, a really great example of an underlying strong framework that has the right primitives being orchestrated up top, and then a data collection layer that drives all of it. So,
yeah. So this is
I
kind of
know.
everything. It's like we put everything we've worked on over the last 2 years just in this singular form, and well, not singular form, inside this platform, attached our agent framework to it. And I think what we hope is, obviously humans can be in here and run commands if they want, but I kind of view the future of this autonomous, like if you're not, I think, angling towards autonomy, it's just probably not worth it. You may as well just use agents as they come out. But I think for us, this hub kind of becomes, I actually went to an analytics piece, like all data from all agents from all processes gets aggregated here. And so for me, kind of becomes like a brain of sorts, where like if you're running multiple ops, or in the same network, that is, if you're running like reversing processes, network ops processes. It all comes here, and then it all kind of can live here, and it becomes like a learning framework that I think over time probably starts to become a little more custom to your environment.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. You have particular apps you look at, you have particular workloads. Actually, one of my favorite things that I've been doing so far is we have all of this amazing code written in GitHub for like all of these cool research primitives and vuln check flows, and it's been awesome to just point the agent at those and say, convert these into a capability for me. Like build an eval, like test it, like take what used to feel like this fragmented workflow and like bring it into this pipeline so it feels actually usable and like it's driving value.
Alrighty. Oh, that's good. Yeah, I have different amounts of credits in each one, and I haven't been able to get through my free set yet, but anyway, I think that's it for the platform. Obviously, continue to make just updates. We took you through kind of one of each environment, but broad. It just happens really quickly. So yeah, we can just continue to build out. Probably some of the things on the horizon, like webhooks and just stability, a little more scale. Let's see if you have any questions. Tori is gonna. Yeah, so if you're like just a pen tester, like first things first is just go grab the TUI and go grab some capabilities.
Yeah, get started.
And just start being like, hey, I have this web app I want to look at. I have, here's my, please write me a tool for my sliver, shell or whatever, my sliver instance. We have some bunch of capabilities where you like reversing, like a sliver C2 tool. So I don't know if you're using sliver, just like go pull down the capability,
Point at the server, give it a shot.
Hook up your container, and then the hooks things, the hooks especially for production use cases are a must. So you don't want to. You obviously don't want to delete a domain controller. I think we've never seen the models try, so I think people are overly cautious on what the models will do. But it is good to have hooks in place. So like, grab some standing operating procedure hooks, and just you don't have to let the model like run loose. Like there's still a lot of control you get over them. But just in terms of starting, just go grab the TUI. Let's see if we really wanted this this piece here. So just go grab the TUI and just get started playing with capabilities. I think we have a bunch of default evaluation environments in there. So if you're interested in evaluations, like on the AI side, people are super into evaluations, but by that same token, it is people have success like without evaluations. So I don't know if it's worth getting all that academic about it if you're having success. Like evaluations are really useful for like regression testing and just making sure that things are the way they were. But otherwise, like models are amazing. And then you could throw any model you want into. So, one of the harder technical challenges was actually providing some inference if people wanted it, but then also making sure that people could bring their own keys if they wanted them. Probably and the harder thing about building in the offensive space specifically is just the data requirements. And so, you don't get to be a SaaS provider if you're selling to offensive security teams who are doing network ops, right? Like I think those folks want a lot of control. And we don't want your data either. We have a ton of it.
Yeah, that's a big part too.
It's like it becomes a responsibility for us, so no thank you.
Yeah. The platform flow is extremely simple to us from like an access and billing perspective. Effectively, we charge cost for the resources that you use as part of infrastructure. So sandboxes, tokens, data storage, things like that. We were extremely reasonable with it, and then the only tier above that is on-prem deploys, which a lot of security teams like want to deploy these as part of like op flows. It's an extremely capable platform that can come down with you, and then you can do all of this cool stuff with a TUI and optimization and then sandboxing and capability dev, and you don't have to lose control of the data at all. So,
Yeah, that's the other thing we're trying. As a CEO, you get to try a lot of stuff,
uh-huh.
and then everyone. So yeah, like, just security's been expensive for a long time, but like, if models are cheap and this like unit of intelligence is cheap, then and people are going to use models for security, then for me it follows like security should be cheap.
Mm-hmm.
So like, why, if everything's on micro VMs and the cost of tokens anyway, like why not just charge that for security? Um, the other one is like build versus buy, like with coding agents. I don't know that there's a lot of really capable like internal teams who can build a lot of cool stuff now.
Mm-hmm.
So I like, do you need as many security vendors? I don't know. I'm not sure if the industry is ready for that conversation because there are a lot of them there. I guess I saw tweet the other day. It's like you either uh, die something or live long enough to see yourself become a vendor, which is what
Oh,
we are now.
wow, that's really good. I like that.
Yeah.
That's
Um,
by the way, I had it finish up that capability, hot reloaded, and now it's finding MLflow and Ray dashboard instances online.
dude, let's see it. Well, actually, maybe not online. You shouldn't show that on
I was
camera.
gonna say, I
Anyway.
don't know. It's really cool. Like it all happens in line. Like we literally just described a goal. It went through and did a bunch of research and wrote like a bunch of flows for a capability. It published the capability and installed it locally, and I just had a hot reload, and the capability was there.
Maybe we'll obfuscate and tweet it. How about that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
But that is a good example. Like, there's like a like, not, your value as a pen tester or your value as a security person is still very much like in your domain knowledge. It's like you just don't. It's, your value is shifted. So, and then models will just continue to get better. So I think just expecting them to get better and building systems that can absorb that or take advantage of it is, it's a different way to build. Um, and we kind of went through it. Like, if you look at our earliest research in terms of like Ghost on the Node from SOCON, we were like using Prefect to like orchestrate these flows, and then in the middle we would have that LLM. But as models get better, like your harnesses start to melt away, and just the models doing more and more things in a natural space. But
Mhm. It's crazy the
yeah,
inversion of like we used to just have so much infrastructure on top of a model, and now like the model is like sitting on top of this pack of infrastructure and like running a lot
yeah,
of it. It's incredible. I'm
yeah.
super
And
excited for the future. I think this,
I don't know that some people are excited.
yeah,
Short term is going to be wild.
yeah.
It's not maybe going to be fun, but long term, I think. I mean, the defenders have always had like home field advantage. It's just they just haven't been able to, I think, get their arms around all of the different things they need to do. So even though we're an offensive team, I think closing the loop is really important. Um,
That's sorry. Oh, I want to show these results so bad. Well, this is so fun. It
well,
identified honeypots and filtered them out. It like
well,
located
maybe
honeypots pretending to be Olama servers, open Olama servers by headers and skipped them.
after
It
game, how many
found
hot people?
genuine Ray servers.
It is kind of wild.
It
So
found
almost everyone's,
experiments on a server. Well, this is crazy. What a world we live in. This is
yeah.
awesome.
I mean, this is why guardrails are important too,
Yeah.
because you don't want to,
We'll
like.
leave that for the next live stream.
um,
Any final
okay,
thoughts from you here, Will, as we like aim to not go over time? I don't know. It's like
we're over time. No, it's fun. Like, space is fun. And then I think just like the acceleration everyone's feeling is scary, but it's going to be good. Um, it's like offense kind of gets a bad rap, but like offense drives defense. So I think just using these tools, using these models to, be a force multiplier, and just create asymmetric advantages that other people who don't know how to use these models or aren't quite as efficient with them. There is a very like, I always like to think is like, if everything else is equal, like what's your advantage? Right. So it's like if everybody has the same model, or if everybody has the same piece of malware, if everyone has the same whatever, like, what do you bring to the table that makes you stand out, or makes you better?
Yeah.
Right. So for us, like opposite, it was like, all the custom malware, and then custom tools. And then for this, I think it's the just that autonomous loop, next to guardrails is sweet. The other thing we haven't talked about is your birthday.
Oh,
So I know we have a board meeting today as well, and we had a bunch of demos. So I'm gonna say happy birthday to my co-founder, who works
thank you.
incredibly hard to build incredibly cool tools.
You weren't there when
Um,
so I woke up. I'm 30 today, by the way, and I had the absolute worst cramp come over my leg when I woke up this morning. I'm sure the
happy
lack of sleep
birthday.
didn't help, but I'm now limping, and I
Yeah,
feel like I got introduced to the 30s quite appropriately on the
it's
start to
not
my
that bad.
birthday.
No, 30 is fun. I met Nick when he was 19 in his like little suit,
Yeah, that's really
doing just raw, just ripping regexes live in Cisco, just like. But yeah,
good
that
times.
was that was actually pretty incredible.
Cool.
Um, Sweet. Yeah, hit us up on the internet. You can find us. Tutorial post socials. Otherwise, we're a fairly transparent group. Just in terms of like questions, thoughts. It's like we don't think we're not like secret sauce people. So that's kind of why we built the way we did. It's just like you have infrastructure, you have domain expertise, you need to apply it. There's a lot of scale, a lot of compute on the floor for people who are interested, and it's going to require just security people to like level up. And it's I don't know if I'd spend too much time on LinkedIn, but I just it's always seems scary, and then if time goes by and then people learn about it, it's just not scary anymore. And we're just at that part where everyone's like, "Oh, it's super scary," but you know,
Nice. Yeah, no final thoughts from me. This tech is super fun. I'm really excited about the future. Outside that, appreciate everyone joining, or for people who watch this later.
yeah.
Unfortunately, it won't be my birthday then, but I do accept late birthday presents.
And then just expect just more updates, stability updates, all kinds of product updates, mention webhooks, and that's us. Out. Have talk to you soon. Some form. Tori had to cut that probably.